So looking at our exponentials video 2, so now we're going to start looking at multiplying with like bases. And we already did this before when we were looking at multiplying monomials. Remember, when we had a monomial, what we learned before is that if we had x to the 2 times x to the 2, we would keep the base and add 2 plus 2. So that meant we had x to the 4. Okay, that meant we added our exponents together. So if we look, that little rule, let's refresh ourselves. Multiplying with like bases. Remember, we have to multiply the coefficients. So when you multiply 7 times negative 2, you get negative 14. Then you have to give everything an exponent. So if it doesn't have one, that means it's 1. And then you add them. So we have our x, 1 plus 1 means now we have x squared. We have our y's. We had 2 plus 2, so that means we have y to the 4th. So if this helps, we had x to the 1 and x to the 1, and we added those. And then we had y squared, y squared. We added our exponents together. So looking at the second one, the x and x, neither one of them have an exponent, so you need to put to the 1 power. So we multiply those lead coefficients. You can put in the calculator. 3 times 8 is 24. And then you have your x, and you would do 1 plus 1 is 2. This is something, like I said, we learned. It was in our yellow foldable. If we look at the third one, even when it's a fraction, that's okay. Fractions are still just numbers. 1/2 times 6 is 3. Make sure everything has an exponent. They need to go in alphabetical order. So the a to the 3rd goes first. And then we have c, 2 plus 1 is 3. So that should be a refresher from multiplying monomials. We already learned how to multiply our exponents. So let's look at the new part today when we do power to a power. So if we look on the outside, now we have 2 exponents. I have a 5 to the 3rd to the 4th power. So this means that I have 4 of these, which means I have 5 to the 3rd times 5 to the 3rd times 5 to the 3rd. So that means this time that my base is, use a different color. My base is 5, and I need to, because it is the same base, we can do this. You add your exponent. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9. So if we look at this one, that negative means that there's a negative 1. I have 2 4 ac squared x's. So you would have negative 1, 4ac squared x times 4ac squared x. Okay, so now it's a problem that you can work out. You will multiply your coefficients, multiply your variables, and add the exponents. So then here's another one. Let's not get into that one just yet. Let's come back to it. So now take a couple minutes and write down what makes power to a power different than regular multiplying with like bases. So I'm going to stop the video and you answer that question. So now, PEMDAS is going to help us to remember the order of operations and the laws of exponents. So when you have to remember what these letters remember. Otherwise, this is pointless. When you have something inside of the parentheses, like your exponent, so that's what this top part is supposed to remember, you have to do that first, okay? Exponents outside of parentheses have to be taken care of first. Then you multiply them, then you divide, then you add, and you subtract. What's helpful to remember with exponents is that when you're multiplying exponents together, like what we were doing, you add the exponents. When you're dividing, we'll learn this later, you subtract. So we'll refresh on that. So when multiplying with like bases, you want to make sure first that everything has an exponent. Okay, so even if it's just to the 1 power, you need to add that 1 in there. You need to multiply the coefficients, and then you keep the base and you add the exponent. So that's our rule when we're multiplying with like bases and even with power to a power, because we'll be using that rule. So let's turn to the back and look at some examples. So there's our steps. Just to remember, step 1 is we take care of 0 exponents. Step 2 is negative, and then we follow PEMDAS. Repeat steps if needed. So step 1, are there any 0 exponents? No. Step 2, negative exponents? No. Now we follow PEMDAS. So make sure everything has an exponent, and then you want to multiply your coefficients, which in this case is 3 times 8, which is 24. And then we have x times x. Keep the base, and you add the exponent. So 1 plus 1, which means that it's 24x squared. This is my answer. Let's look at number 2. So are there any 0 exponents? No. Are there any negative exponents? No. So follow PEMDAS. Multiply your coefficients. So 7 times negative 2, we'll do 7 times negative 2. I'll do it a couple extra steps. Make sure everything has an exponent. So we have x to the 1, x to the 1. Keep the base, and you add the exponent. So 1 plus 1. Keep your base y, and you add your exponents, 2 plus 2. So when we simplify, 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. We have x squared, and we have y to the 4th. Looking at number 3. Following my steps. 0 exponents? No. Negative exponents? No. I need to follow PEMDAS. So PEMDAS, in case you forgot it, means that we take care of our parentheses first. So we need to remember right here that this is squaring that guy. So really what we have is 3x times 3x, that's an x, times y times x times y to the 4th. Make sure everything has an exponent, whether it's 1 or something else. Then we multiply our coefficients. So we would do 3 times 3. Then we keep the base. So here's an x to the 1, x to the 1, x to the 1. So those are all the same. Keep the base, and you add the exponent. So 1 plus 1 plus 1. And then we also have y to the 1, y to the 4th. So it would be y1 plus 4. So what does that mean? 3 times 3 is 9. X to the 3rd, y to the 5th. As you get better at this, you can cut this step out. That's okay. But you need to be highlighting like terms. Like terms. That word comes back to get you every time. Like terms. We have 1/2 and 6. So we would do 1/2 times 6. Then we have c squared, and that c will be to the 1 power. So we have c2 plus 1. And then all we have is 1a cubed. So it's going to be a to the 3. If we simplify, 1/2 times 6 is 3. C to the 3rd, a to the 3rd. How does this work in real life? So find the volume of your figure. What is volume? You need to remember volume is length times width times height. So if we look, here is my L. Here, right here is my W, and over here is my height. So our volume will be length, 5x, times width, which is 2y cubed, times my height, which is 3x to the 4. multiply your coefficients, which remember is the numbers in front. So volume is equal to 5 times 2 times 3. You want to keep the base and add the exponent. So we have x, that's a 1. 1 plus 4. And then with the y, we just have the 1y to the third. So you bring down your y to the third. So your volume, put it in the calculator, 5 times 2 times 3. Should get 30. X to the fifth, y to the third.